Notre-Dame's reconstruction joins the completion of Gaudi's La Sagrada Familia as one of the most anticipated architectural events of this century. On April 15, 2019, one of the most significant moments of European architecture burned to the ground. Parisians saw from afar as their cherished cathedral gave way to fire. The world fretted about losing yet another cultural hallmark. The cathedral attracts more visitors than the Eiffel Tower, an estimated 13 million annually, and has become a favorite among tourists and Parisians. Mass is still conducted there regularly, and when the fire destroyed part of Notre Dame, the whole world mourned. However, the cathedral has been destroyed multiple times throughout history. Now, let us hear its tale. The year is 1710, and a band of workmen excavating an area beneath the nave of Notre-Dame de Paris had just stumbled upon one of the oldest monuments ever discovered in France. This work of a guild of boatmen in Roman times, called the Pillar of the Boatmen, was created in honor of Tiberius Caesar in the 1st century. It was dedicated to the Roman god Jupiter, and its skillfully carved surface featured Roman gods and fragments of the mysterious Gallic mythology. It once stood in a Gallo-Roman temple, where the current Notre-Dame de Paris has stood for more than 800 years. Then named Gaul, it had not been a country in itself, but was part of the Roman Empire since Julius Caesar conquered it sometime in the 50s BCE. Its residents were Celts, people with a complicated mythology of their own. And while the Romans conquered them, they did not allow their culture to die out completely. When the Western Roman Empire began to collapse, Gaul fell to the tribes of native people who had made it their home. This newborn France would experience several periods of division and chaos over the next few centuries, but it was mainly united under King Charlemagne in the 8th century. France continued to consolidate its lands and culture while the Normans conquered England in 1066. Meanwhile, the Gallo-Roman temple where the Pillar of the Boatmen had stood had long since been destroyed. In its place, Childebert I, an early Frankish king of the Merovingian dynasty reigning in the 6th century, built a majestic basilica that he dedicated to St. Stephen. It was called the Cathedral of Saint-Étienne. This basilica would stand for 600 years. Bishop after bishop came and went, presiding over the most important cathedral in the capital of France, and each was content with the ancient building where generations of Parisians came to worship. Until, in 1160, a new bishop came to power. A bishop whose ambition knew no boundaries, and for him there would have to be a new cathedral. More enormous and ambitious cathedrals were being built all over France, and the novel Gothic style was all the rage. So convinced that Paris needed a new Gothic cathedral, Maurice de Sully, for that was the bishop's name, went to persuade King Louis VII. Louis VII was quick to open the royal coffers for the new cathedral. Plans were drawn up, although we do not know who drew them. The original architects of Notre Dame have lost their names to history. Louis's willingness to spend money on the new cathedral was a good thing, though in today's money, Notre Dame would have cost about $1 billion. There was money to buy the expensive land for the cathedral to be built upon. However, there were still endless acres of red tape to wade through for the land to be officially transferred. This task proved to be one of many delays. Nonetheless, in 1163, the cornerstone was laid and construction began. Stone was quarried or pilfered from Roman ruins. Hundreds of builders were employed, and the work went quickly for almost 2 decades. Everything about Notre Dame was new and experimental. For centuries, architects had been creating square, squat buildings with fat walls and few windows. This was the only way they could see large buildings bearing the weight of their roofs. Yet, for the past few decades, technology had accelerated. Architects could now design taller buildings with more windows, creating a newer and more elegant style, so the Gothic church was born. While not the first, Notre Dame was a relatively early example. By 1182, the choir, its aisles, and the high altar were complete. The altar was consecrated, and the first Mass was held there that year. But the cathedral itself was far from finished. Its nave, facades, and intricate decorative work still had to be done. A square still had to be leveled and built in front of the cathedral, and a whole new street also had to be built to connect the mighty building with the rest of Paris more easily. Louis VII had been dead for 2 years by this time. During the reign of his son, Philip II, the construction of Notre Dame continued unabated. Maurice de Sully had died peacefully in 1196, having at least celebrated one Mass inside his mighty new church, even if he did not see its completion. When Louis VIII, the son of King Philip II, was succeeded by Louis IX, now known as Saint Louis for his peace and righteousness, it was a boon for the building of Notre-Dame. Louis supported Gothic architecture and was devotedly religious, and he continued to pour funds from the royal treasury into the cathedral. It turned out well since the architects had discovered a flaw in their plans. The original architects had underestimated the weight that the thinner walls of the cathedral would have to support. Its massive roof, constructed with planks from over 1,000 oak trees, was too heavy, and stress fractures were spreading through the stone walls. Something would have to be done. Yet with the king strongly supporting the Gothic style, simply making the walls thicker was out of the question. The solution was innovative and elegant: flying buttresses. These beautiful arches, anchored on one end into the cathedral walls and built into heavy and robust pillars, kept the more open and airier look of Notre-Dame while preventing it from collapsing beneath its weight. Notre-Dame became one of the first cathedrals built with flying buttresses. The work continued on gorgeous statues of biblical characters, intricate transepts, and the western facade. By 1250, the characteristic two towers crowning the western facade had been built, and work continued, adding gargoyles and hundreds of figures in the tympanum. The death of King Charles IV came at the end of a slew of short reigns by not-so-eminent kings. Charles's death in 1328 plunged France and England into a century of darkness and conflict. He left no direct heir, and the man next in line to the throne of France was seated upon the throne of England. A distant French relative, Philip of Valois, would hurriedly be crowned, but it was too late. The 100 Years' War lasted more than a century between England and France. Yet Notre-Dame was almost finished, and nothing would stop her, not even the most protracted conflict in European history. Paris itself was in constant peril, as the balance of power swung wildly from one side to the other. But construction continued. Finally, in 1345, the cathedral was completed and named the Notre-Dame de Paris, Our Lady of Paris. It had taken almost 200 years to build, but it was finally finished. Notre-Dame de Paris quickly became the cathedral of choice for auspicious and grandiose ceremonies: masses, requiems, beautiful services, and coronations. The coronation of Henry VI in the 15th century set the stage for what Notre-Dame had become in its 86 years of existence: the home cathedral of Paris. Yet Notre-Dame was not only the setting for pompous and joyous occasions. Even before its completion, the mighty church would bear witness to one of the bloodiest and most controversial executions in medieval France. Philip IV's execution of Jacques de Molay outside the cathedral signaled the end of the Templar order. On a fateful day in 1548, John Calvin and his Huguenots, on fire since the day that Martin Luther nailed his theses to the door of a German church, ransacked the cathedral. In their eyes, Notre-Dame, standing in the center of Paris with all its paintings and statues, was an unbearable symbol of the church's immorality. Stones of the cathedral were smashed and shattered on the street. Artworks that had taken years to complete were irreparably broken in mere minutes. 100 years after the Huguenots ransacked the cathedral, the 30 Years' War occurred, doing just as much damage. Its sheer destruction was on a scale hitherto unheard of. Plague, war, and famine had defaced Europe's people in much the same way as Notre-Dame was stripped of her treasures. Robert de Cotte, a prestigious architect, was chosen for the task of renovating Notre-Dame. Work on the cathedral began in 1699, focusing on the sanctuary and high altar of the church. While many medieval figures have been removed or destroyed, Notre-Dame was now thoroughly stylish. 76 paintings, some of them priceless masterpieces, were donated. One of these was Charles de la Fosse's Adoration of the Magi, a famous depiction of the three wise men worshiping the baby Jesus, painted in 1715. By the time the renovations were completed in the mid-18th century, Notre-Dame was at the height of its beauty. The art and materials within it were immeasurably valuable. Its structure had been restored to even more than its original strength. However, at the height of the French Revolution in the late 18th century, the mighty structure was pillaged and plundered like never before. A mixture of philosophy and pagan rituals continued to be celebrated inside the venerated walls for years. However, Napoleon had other ideas. On December 2, 1804, Notre-Dame was packed with people. Years of restoration work turned it from the whole of pagan worship it had been during the Revolution back to its former glorious self. After his coronation, however, Napoleon's focus turned to warfare. The cathedral fell into neglect once more. By 1831, Notre-Dame's interior had practically fallen to pieces. No one was more affected than Victor Hugo. He wrote a novel titled Notre-Dame de Paris, later published in English as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It told the story of the unfortunate foundling Quasimodo, a bell ringer of Notre Dame in the Middle Ages at the height of the cathedral's glory. The story tugged at the hearts and minds of people all over France, and public outcry demanded the restoration of Notre Dame. In an era when freshly minted neo-Baroque architecture was taking over most of the cities, Lassus, Viollet de Luc, and their colleagues went against the grain. They did add a few embellishments, however. While they worked from old drawings of the cathedral in its Gothic splendor, they added a famous line of stone chimera along the roof and built a new spire that has become an icon of Notre Dame's beauty. The renovations took 2 decades to complete. By 1865, Notre Dame was once again restored to its full and splendid glory. The tenor bell of Notre Dame tolled, ringing out across the city, breaking the silence that had enveloped Paris for 4 long and frightening years. Its sweet and somber tone echoed throughout the streets, bouncing off the wreckage of the brutal battle that had just been fought there. But as Hitler took over Paris in the Second World War, Notre Dame lost its soul. When Paris was freed in 1944, the bells of Notre Dame were rung. The city erupted into a celebration of noise, jubilant to be free after 4 years of silence. In 1963, as the world was starting to settle down after decades of global warfare, Notre Dame celebrated its 800th birthday. Malrue's anniversary gift to the cathedral was a thorough cleaning. It took hours of labor and multitude of workers, but by the year's end, Notre Dame sparkled again. The year the Soviet Union fell and the Cold War finally ended, 1991, Notre Dame was once again extensively renovated. By the beginning of the 21st century, Notre Dame looked as glorious as expected, considering its advanced age. So what makes the Notre-Dame de Paris so iconic? An art enthusiast will speak of its break from the classical values of Romanesque architecture. You might hear a limerick or two about the grace, skill, and grandeur of Gothic architecture, whether it be Chartres, Notre Dame, Canterbury, or the recently built Milan Cathedral. However, for the French, Notre Dame serves a much higher purpose. The historical artifact in the center of Paris is a testament to French ingenuity, freedom, and resilience. It reminds the Parisians of their ardent historical struggles, of how they managed to survive through thick and thin. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Notre Dame, check out our book, Notre-Dame de Paris, a captivating guide to one of the most famous Catholic cathedrals of medieval Europe. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.